Davaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. वाचा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन् इति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा टू ऑल द डिवोटीज।
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी।
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
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 ओम
ओम नमो
नमो
भगवते
भगवते
वासुदेवाय।
वासुदेवाय।
नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमम्।
नारायणं
नारायणं
नमस्कृत्य
नमस्कृत्य
नरं चैव नरोत्तमम्
देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये।
देवीं व्यासं वातो जयमुदीरये।
शृणतां स्वकथः कृष्णः पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तनः।
शृण्वतां
सुमतां
स्वकथाः
स्वगता
कृष्णः
कृष्ण
पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तनम्।
पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तनः।
हृदयन्तः स्तोयभद्राणि विदुनोति सुरस्तताम्।
हृद्यन्तस्तो
हृद्यन्तस्तो हि अभद्राणि
हरिभद्राणि
विदुनोति
विदुनोति
सुहृदस्ताम्।
सुहृदस्ताम्।
नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया।
नष्टप्रायेषु
नष्टप्रायेषु
अभद्रेषु
नित्यं भागवत
नित्यं
सेवया।
भगवत्सेवया।
भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवती नैष्ठिकी।
भगवति
भगवति
उत्तमश्लोके
उत्तमश्लोके
भवति
भक्तिर्भवति
नैष्ठिकी।
नैष्ठिकी।
Nityam Bhagavata Sevya. Daily recitation, daily Shravanam, Mananam, daily attendance of Srimad Bhagavatam always removes all inauspicious things from our lives. Since it is worshipping Lord Krishna, the Uttama Sloka, he helps us develop the Naistiki Bhakti.
Prabhuji, you can make me the co-host, Prabhuji. Right.
Sure.
Yeah, raise the hand, Prabhuji. Mohandas.
You want me? Shall I raise the hand?
I have raised the hand, Prabhuji.
Okay, okay. I'll make you the call.
Thank you,
Okay.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Just wait for a minute.
Request all the devotees to mute yourself, please. Hare Krishna.
Mohandas Prabhuji, is that fine?
Yeah, thank you very much, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. Hare
Thank you
Krishna,
very much.
Prabhuji.
Thank you. Very kind of you to join. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare.
Hare.
Chapter 7. is titled The Son of Drona Panish. If you look at the title, Dronacharya has been reduced to Drona because his son has committed abominable crime. The crime or the good activities that the son does always reflects on the father because it ends up reflecting the upbringing of the child that has come to your house. It is the primary responsibility of the parents and for a son, father, to have a proper upbringing so that he does sarva jana hitaya, good for every human being and welfare for the people. This is the reason why Dronacharya has been ended up with the name Drona. Let's look at the bird's eye view of chapter 7, and then we'll go in detail of the area that we are today concerned. Our concern today is to go through and navigate through with full understanding of verses 16 to 30. First 7 verses describes Srila Vyasadeva's inspiration for compiling Srimad Bhagavatam, vision of the Lord, and of course the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. Subsequent 4 verses describes Srila Vyasadeva who teaches Srimad Bhagavatam to none other than his well-worthy Sukadeva Goswami son. Sukadeva Goswami's study in detail is described, study of Srimad Bhagavatam. The next and the last section, which is a big section from verse 12 to 58, basically comprises of how Parikshit Maharaj has his birth, his activities, and as everyone departures, he also departs from the face of the earth. So the end result is to know how Parikshit Maharaj he renounces his glorious kingdom. So the important thing is first events leading to birth of Maharaj Parikshit. 12 to 16 verses describe the lamentation to Pandava's dead sons. 17 to 34 describes Arjun who captures Aswatthama. That's the section of interest today. Verse 35 to 58 describes the solving dilemma regarding punishment to be meted out to Aswatthama. Very dicey and the difficult area. But when you go through the first 34 verses, that's when that dilemma becomes very apparent. And your decision making and thought process leads you to what ultimately Draupadi suggested, Krishna and Arjuna accepted, and Yudhishthira executed the ultimate ordered Arjuna to execute the ultimate decision. It's always a teamwork, and that's why everybody in the team is involved in making a decision, and that's why we are going to see through. Each one is being asked about their opinion. After the great war of Kurukshetra, five Pandavas, Lord Krishna, Draupadi, their children, and few others were left. Of course, Balaram and Vidura were two who did not participate in the war, and thus one went to pilgrimage, other went to other activities, and both returned after the war was over. So the question of discussions and decisions are left to these few people who are left at the end of a big war which destroyed almost most of the world. To understand the decision making and to understand the process, we'll just roughly go through the other part of first 15 verses. Basically, it describes Vyasadeva's inspiration for compiling Srimad Bhagavatam and the low glories of the Srimad Bhagavatam, considering the vision of the Lord. Pauragadi Rishi asked questions about the Vyasadeva, and these are being answered, as you know, by Sutta Goswami. You know the context of reference that when Sukadeva Goswami is reciting Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj, who had a curse of dying in 7 days and after 7 days and 7 nights, is listening to Sukadeva Goswami without eating food or drinking water or going for any break. At that time, Sudha Goswami is a witness and he also is listening to that entire Bhagavatam. Here, Sutta Goswami is now reciting the same Srimad Bhagavatam to the rishis collected at Naimisharanya. These are the rishis who got together to perform 1,000-year sacrifices. And during this process of sacrifices and yagna, they gradually change from a process of total karma kanda, yagnas, and sacrifices to a bhakti mark or devotional service. Vyasadeva saw the Lord, Maya, and the suffering jiva whose miseries will be mitigated by bhakti. Thus, he combines the ultimate Srimad Bhagavatam, who is considered to be the Granth avatar of Lord Sri Krishna. The question to asked by Saunakadi Rishi in the first chapter was, where does Lord Krishna and Dharma reside after Lord has left for his heavenly abode? And the answer was Srimad Bhagavatam. I hope you remember that last question. Subsequently, Srila Vyasadeva teaches Srimad Bhagavatam to Sukadeva Goswami, and Sukadeva Goswami studies Srimad Bhagavatam very well. He thus becomes devotee of the Lord. There are many questions that do come in our mind. But remember that it's always the providence or the will of the Lord that we all liberated, non-liberated, Baddha, Nitya Baddha, Nitya Siddha have to follow. And remember that this providence or the God works in the most mysterious ways. So rather than trying to analyze and use mental speculation, as Srila Prabhupada always calls it, don't waste the time. Accept the verdict of the Lord as a gospel truth and carry on from there. Obviously, because Aswathama ruthlessly killed the sons of Pandavas, who were not only children, who were not only sleeping, who did not have any weapons with them. And in spite of these strong three parameters against any warrior who would raise their weapon in front of them, the Aswathama kills them in their sleep. Children, women, old age people are always never being brought into the war. Enemy who is not awake is never being fired at. And the enemy who does not have a weapon in his possession cannot be asked to fight the war. In spite of these three contradictions, Aswathama very cruelly killed all the Pandavas' children. And this killing certainly brought a lot of lamentation to Draupadi, the mother. And this lamentation is described vividly in these 5 verses and worth going through. A woman feeling loss of all children at one time, all of a sudden, without any fault of theirs, is grief enough to move one person in a bad lamentation. The verses 17 to 34, which are now our main verses, is where Arjuna captures Aswathama. The initial 17 to 21 verses describe Aswathama releasing Brahmastra. Aswathama had been considered a very reckless warrior. Warrior is the ultimate fate maker in the wars and on the war grounds. His balanced mind, equipoised understanding, and remembrance of Shastras only can lead him to right actions because his actions involve killing people and giving them lifeline. And thus, any warrior, very understandably, should be having all the powers that they are so notoriously in depth, as Lord Actor's law says, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That the chances of getting corrupted with the thinking is very high. And that's why they must follow the rules of the Shastras for any war. When Aswathama knew that he cannot retract Brahmastra, he had no right to send up a Brahmastra to anyone. If you throw a weapon, you must know to control the weapon. Because once you throw the weapon, you want the destruction as per your calculations. You do not want the weapon to decide the extent of destruction, and then destruction goes beyond the imagination of a warrior who throws the weapon. Thus, in war also, there are mathematical calculations, and thus all the calculations are done in the mind of a warrior at all the time. Unfortunately, Ashwatthama did not know how to retract the Brahmastra back, and he only knew how to release the Brahmastra. Brahmastra is the present time equivalent of atomic bomb, but much more devastating than our atomic bomb. The human being, though very considering themselves to be very advanced in the science, have made an atom bomb, but they need to be thrown to a target. The target, if stationary, is easier, but when not, it's very difficult to aim a target. Not only that, hitting when you throw something has to be in a straight line, and thus question of bending and circumambulating does not come in. Whereas the Brahmastra, the target is concentrated in the consciousness, and thus the Brahmastra, when released, whatever obstruction comes on the way of that straight line from the consciousness of a warrior to the ultimate target is also circumvented by the same consciousness that has sent that Brahmastra or released that Brahmastra. And thus, once released, Brahmastra is definitely going to hit the target which was aimed at by the consciousness of a person or a warrior who sends it. Whereas in our present day bombs and the atomic bombs, you may miss the target, you may misrepresent the target, or you may kill entirely a different community than what you thought you would. This is not the only difference that the Brahmastra and the present day atomic bombs have. The pattern of radiation and pattern of heating had been much more destructive, much more advanced, and much more stronger than many atom bombs brought together at the present time. This actually gives us realization that the Brahmastra which has been released has been so strong, so powerful, so perfect to its target, and then you have nothing to retract it back. It's very essential that any weapon that you send or throw or raise in front of the head of an enemy, you must have a power to restrain and stop it hitting the head, separating the head from the body. Swasthama does not have this power, and the all the wrongs that has been done in this phase of selection of Brahmastra has been described here. Once the Brahmastra has been thrown, Uttara, the wife of Abhimanyu, son of Arjun, who had been killed wrongly by so-called Mahatmas of that time, including Bhishma Pitama, Karna, and Guru Dronacharya, killed Aswathama wrongly when they all knew that he has no vidya lying with him to get out of that Chakravyuh. So now it is the duty of Arjuna to see that Brahmastra does not hit where it is sent for. And it has been sent for a pregnant woman, Uttara, whose womb is containing the ultimate heir apparent of Pandavas, Parikshit Maharaj himself. The name Parikshit came in because he is the only living entity who has seen the Lord in the womb, and thus he has he remembers how Lord looks like. And during his lifetime, whenever he was meeting any human being, his mind and eyes would work on examination that whether he is the same person whom he saw in the womb. And this is the reason why examination is converted into pariksha, and then he is called Parikshit, taking his own exam every minute. Arjuna has wonderful prayers for Lord Krishna, and we'll go through some part of the prayers which are very nicely done. And we must learn how to pray to our Guru Maharaj, to our spiritual master, and our Shiksha Gurus to please them as they are pleasing you by teaching all through. Lord Krishna, after hearing the prayers and submission of Arjuna, responds to the event that has occurred. And this is also nicely described by Vedvyasa. Aswathama has caused this, and he is instructing Arjuna to counteract with his weapons. Arjuna knows how to throw Brahmastra and also knows how to retrieve it back. When one Brahmastra is being released, the other warrior can release his Brahmastra, very similar to what we see and learn all about S300 and S400 American or Russian origin. But when the missiles are coming on your head, you throw another missile from the ground. Both hit in the air, and the blast occurs in the air without destroying anything on the earth. Similarly, as per the instruction, Arjuna follows these instruction of Lord Krishna, throws his Brahmastra, and when it hits the Brahmastra, he retrieves his Brahmastra back. This is very important for a Brahmastra or a nuclear device. We see lot many of the missiles being countered by the guns from the ground, but they are not nuclear missiles and thus they do not cause any radiation. All they cause is the heat and destruction, but as it occurs way up in the space, Earth is not affected. However, if there is a Brahmastra or a nuclear bomb, obviously the radiation is going to be there, and that radiation is ultimately going to come down to the earth and destroy the earth. And this is the reason why Arjuna takes his released Brahmastra and retrieves it back. Ultimately, he is described in verse number 29 to 34 how Arjuna arrests Aswatthama. The further argument about what to be done and what not to be done will be discussed by teacher tomorrow, and I leave that for him as text from 35 to 58 onwards. Let's go into little depth now that we have more or less a bird's eye view or Vihanga or Lokan. We can go inside and find out more about the pulse that are present in each and every area. Arjuna captures Aswathama, which has been described from 17 to 26. Now, when one captures other, there is always a comparison. And so here we are comparing between Arjuna and Aswathama. Both have been trained by the same spiritual master and the same guru in the military training. One had been much more nearer to him, being his father, while the other, he was nearer to him as well as his spiritual master or father. It's Arjuna and Aswathama. The difference between the Arjuna, who is appearing to be a divine person, always with the Lord, always following the instructions of the Lord, and keep praising for all that he achieves, praying to the Lord and giving all the fruits to the Lord himself, as against demoniac Aswathama, who now is vengeanceful and his vengeance has no control. Aswathama saw the Arjuna coming, and Arjuna saw the Brahmastra coming. Naturally, Aswathama became fearful the moment he saw Arjuna, But with looking at Brahmastra, Arjuna saw a very dangerous glare in that weapon. Aswathama had been in a precarious condition because he had fought the war the whole day and weeks before. And not only him, but even his horses were tired. Arjuna was comfortable because he was in the shelter of the Lord Krishna. He was fresh with a guide with him and a mind to think nicely in a good environment. Arjuna offered prayers to Lord Krishna for his guidance on how to deal with the situation. Aswathama had no such possibilities because he never thought or rehearsed what possible situations he will pass through. It is said that making a decision soon after the event is very difficult because the back picture is full of dirt floating all around. When any event occurs, it always leads to a lot of dust and dirt floating from the ground. And when the picture is full of dust and the dirt, making clouds around the events to realize what is right and what is wrong. And thus, learned scholars always say that, as we say, think before you act. You give time for the dust to settle down, get the picture clear, get the truth behind the event, and then make the decision. And mind you, dust and the dirt that gathers and goes up in the cloud also settles down quite quickly. This is very important because all the people who are learned want to execute everything around them with proper logical ending. Always wait for this dust to get cleared or at least settle down to some extent for a picture to appear. And that picture would tell them all about the event so that you can make up your decision or a decision of the mind to go in the right path. Your decision not only has to be right in the time and place there, but has to be right in the kala. And that's why it has to be followed and understood by the scrutiny of the scriptures. You shouldn't do anything which scripture doesn't allow you to do. Aswathama released Brahmastra, which is dangerous to the entire creation, not just Arjuna. Though Aswathama had no concept, no control, or the knowledge of retracting the weapon. I described this much more in detail, so I would not go in it again. But remember that Aswathama did not know the Vidya to retrieve or retract Brahmastra back. He only knew how to throw Brahmastra to the enemy. Arjuna, by his father Dronacharya, was his father, means Aswathama's father, Dronacharya, was taught about the Vidya or knowledge, not only to throw the Brahmastra, but also to retrieve it where and when he wishes. Let's look at the Arjuna's prayers before he captures Aswathama. These prayers are in the verses 22 to 26. These five verses vividly describes the Lord's magnanimity, Lord's powers, Lord's glories, and all that is opulent about the Lord himself. Arjuna had been the friend of the Lord, but a pure devotee of the Lord, and thus his love to the Lord was like a friend, but ultimately Lord was his spiritual master. He describes that Lord has ability to offer protection. That's described in text 22. Lord Krishna is competent to instill fearlessness in the heart of the devotee. Lord Krishna is the only path to help someone out of burning flames of material existence. Lord's status with material creation is a supreme controller, expands all over the creation. He is present in each and every nook and corner of the world as the master engineer for any project would be knowing the project all about or that multi-story building in all nooks and corners. But he is also present in each and every atoms. This was considered to be an imaginary presence of Lord in the atom. But now it has been discovered 3 years ago as God's particle, which are golden in color, and they exist along with atom, proton, neutron, etc. And so the existence of the Lord in every atom of the creation is no more an imagination, but it is the fact of a science, a present day science. Transcendental to material existence, he has crossed over, though he has created the material existence, the material nature, the material manifestation. He is not affected by them, or they have no power to act on the Lord. Everything happens as the Lord wishes and wills. The Lord has potency to cast away material existence by his spiritual potency. Not only the material existence has any control over the Lord, but Lord has potency to remove any unwanted material existence or cast away any of it. He is externally situated in full bliss and knowledge. We talked about the knowledge in detail about that civil engineer that we talked. Lord specifically descends to protect his devotee, to annihilate the demons. You know the verse very well. Bhagavad Gita. Would anybody like to recite the verse?
परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृतां धर्म संस्थापनार्थाय संभवामि युगे युगे.
Thank you very much, Shanti Sudesh Mataji. Wonderful. So he comes here to annihilate the demons, to establish the proper religious principles. So this is the glory of the Lord and the prayers of Arjuna before embarking on his next step. After going through these many things which are given in the text between 15 to 16 to 30, we'll just roughly go through the chapter again before we go into each and every verse in detail. First 7 verses describes the Vasudeva's inspiration in compiling Srimad Bhagavatam, vision of the Lord and glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Vasudeva teaches Srimad Bhagavatam to his son Sukadeva Goswami, and Sukadeva Goswami studies it in great detail up to verse 11. And then all is about the Parikshit Maharaj, how Parikshit Maharaj renounced his glorious kingdom, which includes glorious birth, activities of Parikshit Maharaj, and departure of Parikshit Maharaj. Events leading to the birth of Parikshit Maharaj, where basically we are at the moment. Lamentation for the Pandavas' dead sons. Arjuna captures Aswatthama. That's the main topic that we have here. And that's why we went through in depth the detail of the prayers of Arjuna to Lord Krishna and glorification of Lord Krishna, solving the dilemma regarding punishment to be meted out to Aswatthama. That goes on from 35th to the last verse. We'll now go through the detailed part of it, the last but the very touchy details, and that I'm sure will let you realize how we can go into the depth of anything without directly going through the textbooks. Of course, everything that we are reading is from that textbook. Verse number 15 and 16. Draupadi cried in distress with tears in her eyes. Arjuna spoke to pacify her and says, after beheading the Brahmana, I will wipe your tears. Then, after burning your sons' bodies, you can take your bath standing on his head, on the head of Aswatthama. Verse number 17 to 34. Most of the verses of ours fall in this group. actually is where Arjuna captures Aswatthama. And so now we are going into little depth here. Verse 17 describes the chase. Guided by Krishna as his charioteer, Arjuna equipped himself with the armor and weapons and set out to chase Aswatthama. 18. Fear. Seeing Arjuna coming at him with great speed, Aswatthama fled in fear. 19 and 20. Brahmastra, seeing his life in danger, his horses exhausted, and finding no alternative, Aswatthama released the ultimate weapon, the Brahmastra, without knowing how to retract it. Verse 21. Thereupon